Hi everyone. So today we'll be doing a demo on the data dictionary objects. So just want to understand a brief about data dictionary. So like the name suggests, data dictionary is, if we split it into something, then it's a data, something relevant to the numbers or contents, or it can be an alphanumeric data, or it can be numerical data, or any other kind of data that is binded in a dictionary, wherein we call it as a data dictionary. In SAP, we have multiple things that we can develop within a data dictionary part. And the one of the parts, major basic part of the data dictionary development is your tables creation. Okay, so there is a specific transaction or a T code wherein we access the data dictionary objects. That is your SE11. Now, to open any transaction, there are multiple ways to open a transaction. One is either you type in directly the transaction name, which is your SE11 for data dictionary. Another is if you have any current session open and you want to create a new session, then what you do is you do a /O and then you type in the transaction name, which will create another session corresponding to your existing current session. If you want to kill the current session and reopen a transaction in the same session, then you use /N and then the transaction name. So there are three ways how you can open a transaction. If you are on the home screen, you directly do it via the transaction code or the transaction name. If you want to create a new session, then you do it via /O. And if you want to kill the current session and reopen a different session in the same window, then you do a /N. Okay, so currently I'll be killing this current home screen session and I'll be opening a different session on the same screen, which is your data dictionary screen. Now this screen, if you see the outline of this screen, this is something which is relevant to data in the system. Now that data can be corresponding to your ECC data. It can also be corresponding to your HANA data. And here we have multiple components within data dictionary. One is a table creation, one is a views, data types, type groups, domains, search, helps, and log objects. So let's discuss about the database tables. Now, what is a table? If I talk about a table creation, table is nothing but a grid of row and columns, right? Wherein you can have a column which is referring to your field in a table, and then there are rows in a table which corresponds to the data in the actual table. Okay, so let's see how we can create a table within your data dictionary. Now, before we create a table, there are things to be considered. If we are working on a standard table, we make sure there is no standard table existing which begins with a Z or Y. But whenever we are doing a customization, we are creating a custom object. Now that custom object development can be anything, whether it can be your table creation or your views creation, or either you are creating a log object, or even in fact you are creating any RICEP development. For example, you are creating reports, or you're doing conversions, or you're doing BAPI creations, or using standard BAPIs. You're creating function modules or function groups. Anything that needs to be customized in SAP begins with a Z or Y. Or until and unless in your real-time environment, you have a specific naming convention for a particular project or a client. Okay. So no standard table will exist, or no standard object in this system will exist with Z or Y. It has to be Z or Y only if it is a custom object. Okay. So for a custom object, for example, I'll be creating a table. I'll create Z test1 table. Z test table. I do click on the create button. Okay. So this is already created. Yeah. Okay. So if you see, when I clicked on the create button and then the screen opened, this is something wherein we provide the properties or the attributes which are subjecting to a particular table creation. Okay. The first one is your table description, or a short description which you give. For example, I give a description as test table. Okay. Now, once I enter the description, it prompts me to a delivery class input field. These are some of the input fields that are required to be entered if you see a checkbox enabled here. For example, in this case, delivery class has a checkbox enabled, which means it is the mandatory field for the table creation. You cannot skip this field and go back to the next step. but you always have to supply some information to this field so that you understand what is the type of a delivery class for this table. Okay. Now, talking about the delivery class, there are different values that you can assign to a delivery class. But before we assign a value, let's understand what a delivery class is. A delivery class is something wherein you make the table recognize that what is the kind of the data that this table will hold. Whether it's a master data, or it's a transactional data, or it's a customizing data, or it's an SAP related data. So there are different options within the delivery class which you can use based on the type of data that a particular custom table will hold. Okay. For example, in this case, if I click on this help button, I have multiple options for my delivery class. These are some standard options available. And for instance, whenever we are doing a custom table creation, we generally prefer for the master or a transactional table data creation. Okay. So here we'll choose the A class, which is your application or master data table creation. The next part is your table view editing or data browse. Now, if you see this drop down, there are multiple options. You can deselect any or you can select any of them. Now here, whenever we are creating a table, we know that whenever we create a table, it's not only about displaying the data, it's also about maintaining the data within the table, right? So when we talk about display and maintenance of contents or data in a table, there are multiple features to it, which we specify here. So there can be cases when we are displaying and maintenance allowing the table so that the user who logs in into this table can be able to display as well as can be able to maintain or make changes to this table, which is your display maintenance allowed option. Another is your display maintenance not allowed, which means the user will not be able to either display or maintain the contents in the table. Fine. And the third option is a display maintenance allowed with restrictions, which means you are giving a specific set of restrictions to the user who is logging in, that they'll be able to only display that much content or they'll be only able to maintain those specific contents into the table. So depending upon the user requirement or the client requirement, we'll choose any of these options. So for now, instance, we'll choose display maintenance allowed so that we are also able to display the data in the table, as well as we are able to maintain or make changes or modify the contents in a table. Next up is we see this attributes tab, right? So this attributes tab will define that who is the person who has last changed the table or last modified the object. Then the package associated to it. Package associated to it will come when you do a saving and an activation. Now here, when we are doing the packages, again, there are two things. One is a local package saving. Another is your custom package saving. Standard package cannot be used for custom objects. Point to be noted, standard packages will not be used for the custom objects. Custom objects can only be logged in either your local objects or your custom packages. Okay. Now, when I talk about local packages, which means the objects that you create in one system will not be movable to any further system in the landscape. Which means if you are doing a development in development system and you're trying to move it into the quality and production system for the client usage, you'll not be able to do if you have a local package selected. But if you have a specific custom package selected, then only your objects which you create in the development system will be transportable. Okay. And packages will always be binded to a TR. Whenever you log any custom object to a package, it will always be logged under a TR. That is why it becomes transportable. You have to move one content from one system to another only via a TR or a transport request. Okay. So once we save, then we'll see whether we save it in a local package or whether we save it in a custom package. And then is the original logon language in which the table is getting created. Delivery and maintenance we already discussed, wherein you define what is the delivery class for a table that you are creating, and table view editing settings, which is allowing the user whether to display or maintain or not display or maintain or display or maintain with restrictions. Next up is your fields. So this is a format wherein you define the fields in a table. Now fields are nothing but similar to your column headings in a table. Okay. So whenever you're defining fields in a table, it may or may not be the case that you need to define it with a Z or Y. But the table object, the main object should always begin with Z or Y. Okay, whenever it's a custom development. So here field names, we can say, let's suppose I am giving it as a employee number, employee name, for example, okay, and employee designation. So these are my three fields that I want to add in this custom table. Okay. Now, when I press enter, if you see currently there are certain boxes, there are certain fields which needs to be filled because they are editable. Okay. So if you see here, besides employee number and employee name and employee designation, there are checkboxes as key and your initial value. Now, when I talk about key is something that will make the field data as unique. Like what we generally also call in SQL language as primary keys, unique keys. So the same concept applies here, wherein you will make a column or a field in a table as a unique key, which means there cannot be any duplication of data within that same field in the entire set of records in a table. Okay. So in our case, when we are thinking about employee data, right, there can be people of similar names. There can be multiple people of similar names. But when we are assigning an employee ID to each of the individual, it is always unique. For example, there are people with name as A, two people with name as A. But then I am assigning an employee ID as 1 to A and another as 2 to A. So both are identifiable using their employee number, which is very much unique as 1 and 2. So I can make my employee number as a unique key field. Initial value column is something which will suggest whether the value in your particular column can be left as blank or non-blank. Okay. So key field, always make sure that you are making it as non-blank. Okay. But if you select this initial value, which means you can keep the key field as blank also. Okay. But if you make one key field in a table as blank, then there can be no other record in the table existing with a blank key field if it is only one key in the table. If there are multiple key fields in a table, for example, I make it as name also, make name also as a key field, the combination of this can be made as blank. For example, in one scenario, employee number and employee name both are blank. In another scenario, employee number is blank, but employee name is have some value. In another case, employee number has some value, but employee name is blank. And in the fourth permutation and combination, we can say both employee number and name have some values assigned to them. Right? So depending upon the key field combination, your initial value will be here. Okay. So currently for this case, we take only employee number as a key field because number is the only unique identifier between multiple people. Now here we have this called as data element or data type, length and decimal and short description. Now if you see here, these are some attributes of a particular field in a table or a column in a table, which signifies that what is the kind of data that particular column in a table will hold. Now, I'm not talking about the delivery class. Delivery class is something wherein you define what kind of data the entire table will hold. Okay, whether it's a master data which is non-frequently changing or it's a transactional data which is frequently changing. But here data element or types or description, this is something relevant to a particular column or a field in a table, wherein you define that particular field will be of a character type or a numeric type, or if it's an integer type, or if it's a string type. So there are different types with which you can define a particular field in a table. And there are two ways to do it. One is using the built-in type, another is using the data element part. So right now we'll do it in the built-in type part. I click on this built-in type icon or button, this data element column will get disabled while all the three remaining column will get enabled. Okay, so let's see this. See, this built-in type has enabled these columns, but disabled the data element. So you can use only one feature at a time, whether you use a built-in type or whether you use a data element for it. Okay. So here we suggest that employee number will be numeric. So I'll choose numeric, and I can give length as 10, and I can give the description as employee number, and then employee name can be character. I can give it as 20 length, and this is employee name. And third is a designation. Again, I can give it as char. Again, 20 characters, employee designation. Okay. This way I can define the type, which will define what kind of content or the type of data that particular column in a table will hold. Okay. Post this, what I'll be doing is I'll be clicking on save button. Now here is this pop-up which defines whether I want to save it in a custom package or I want to save it as a local object. When I'm saving it as a local object, again, I would reiterate, it means that your contents will only be limited to a particular system. They are non-transportable. But if I choose a custom package, if it is already created or if I create one, then the objects become transportable. Okay. So for the moment, setting onto the local object, which will create this option. So here, if you see, this has been saved. And in SAP, it's not always only about saving. Once you save the contents, you also have to activate the objects. Activation means that this particular object has now been residing into the system and can be available for reuse, okay, or for rerunning. So the activation symbol here is this one. You can press Ctrl F3 also to activate the object. When I activate for a table, you will have some technical settings also. Okay, so this is the window wherein you define the technical settings for a table. So in the attribute section or the property section, we discussed about the delivery class of a table, but here we will discuss about the data class of a table. The data class of a table is the quantity or the amount of data that the particular table will be able to hold, not the type of data. Type of data is defined by your delivery class, whether it's a master or a transactional data, but data class will define what is the amount or the capacity with which the contents can be held in a table. Now here, again, there are multiple options. Like for master data, we have this class as APPL0. For transactional, we have APPL1. In our case, we can use both APPL0 and 1. Another organization and customizing, we have APPL2 and so on. So I can use APPL0. And then the size category will define the amount. Okay. So 0 means that you can have 0 to 6100 records. 1 means you can have 6100 to 24,000 records, and so on. We have multiple size category. I can choose one here. And then I'll click on the save button. Okay. Once I click on save, there is no option to activate the technical settings, but we can only do the activation of the main table. So we come back one screen. And now you see, it has given me this pop-up to activate the table, only selecting my table entry. Okay. These are already created objects which are not in the active state, but we will take charge of only our object development, which we have done, and we'll try and activate that table. So this line is selected, gtest_sh. I click on this tick button, and it gives me warning. Whenever you get a warning, which means that the table has been successfully activated, there are no errors, and you can do the execution of the table. Okay. If you want to display the warnings, you may, and see what are the warnings, but this does not impact the activation of a table. Okay. Which means that your table is successfully created and it's active. And if you want to re-see the object, you can come again to SA11. For example, I'll close this session and open another session in the same window, and I'll only do the display. So this gives me the table contents which are already created. Had this table not been activated, then it would have caused an issue. It would not have allowed you to see the contents thoroughly. Okay, so now it is properly activated and hence you are able to see the table. Now to see the contents, this is one icon wherein you see the contents in a table. Okay. So if you click here, you see this pop-up. Here you can do the filtration. Okay. Filtration, like if you have, let's suppose 10 records already existing in the table, you can do the filtration by the values here. For example, I have employees ranging from 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and till 10. I can filter it out on 5 and I can get the record of employee which is having employee number as 5. Similarly, if you do an open run, it means you will list out all the data within that table, subjecting to the number of entries or number of hits. If you have 100 here, then at a time, you can only see 200 records and then you have to do a scroll. Again, if you keep it as blank, then you can do the complete set of data. Okay. For the moment, let's go and see the number of entries. Here it is 0. We'll try to create an entry. So how do we create an entry? We go to, first of all, we have to come into the edit mode. This is the icon for putting your table in display and change mode within the screen. Okay. Or you can do a control F1 as well. To create an entry, I'll go into utilities and table contents and then do a create entry. When I click on this entry, I will have this window wherein I can add the data and save it. So for here, employee number, I can keep 1. I can give employee name as 1. Okay. And designation, or I can give, and designation as consultant. And I will give it as save. Then if I want to create another record, I can either reset or I can override the existing content and I will do employee number 2 and then I will choose geeks and again I'll do consultant. Okay. So these are the entries that I created. I will click on contents again. I'll see the number of entries. Okay, it didn't save. Yeah. Okay. Let me create one other entry. Okay, so 2 records are saved. Now we'll see the data by clicking on again this contents icon. And here we'll see the number of entries as 2. Close this window. Now, whenever you have to see the contents in a table, you have to do an execution. By execution, I mean either you press an F8 button or you click on this icon, timer icon. Okay, here you see 2 records, 1 and 2 with and Geeks as employee name and consultant as a designation. Now, if you see, only employee number column is highlighted in blue while the remaining columns are gray. Now, this is because employee number was only the field which was utilized or defined as a primary key. And hence, it is distinctly defined here. So, let's suppose I want to filter out an employee number 2. I can get only the record with employee number 2. So, this is how you could do the filtration of your data within your table contents. Okay. So this is a basic overview of how you create a table, how you customize a table, how you create or define a particular field or column in a table and associate a particular type to a table, right? So we'll discuss about it more in detail once you enroll for the classes. So yeah, thank you all.